Hey y'all, so I am back, not with a live, but it is very, very important. So this was sent to me last night by Heaven Sent, and love the name. First of all, shout out to you. Thank you for sending this to my email. If y'all ever get information, y'all want to send it to me. Sometimes I can get around to it. If I feel it's something that people really need to know about that no one's really talking about, or people maybe are talking about it, but nobody's checking for it, so nobody sees it. So this right here is absolutely, oh my gosh, I just read it like fully, like I skimmed it last night, but I just read it almost fully. Um, and it is not good at all. This is bad. If what they are saying in this article is true, and then I found something on TikTok with someone else talking about it, we are in for it. We are in trouble. Okay. So they are saying, oh, I'm not even sharing it. Here we go. Well, I wish I could make it like bigger. So 8 weeks to empty shelves, 60 days to famine, what caused it, and what you need to do immediately. This is what the article is entitled, and it is by, I need my glasses on. Just want to give this person their credit for doing their research. So this article is by Mark Shryock. Yeah. Okay, so he says 8 weeks to empty shelves, 60 days to famine, what caused it, and what you need to do immediately. I called this timeline months ago, he says, June and July 2026. I said it when there was no data to support it. I said it when people thought I was wrong. I said it when even the AI systems I work with told me I was getting ahead of the evidence. I said it because I could see the convergence coming through my training in systems analysis, and because something deeper than data was telling me the timeline was right. And I will say, always believe your gut instincts, because something is telling you that something is not right. People are noticing that things are not right, but they can't pinpoint what exactly it is and how they're coming to this. You are being guided. Your eyes are being open spiritually and all. So he says, now the data is here. Now, these are his words. So I'm just reading his words, and it confirms everything. I have run this research across 4 separate large language models. I have cross-referenced every claim against the U.S. Energy Information Administration, the International Energy Agency, Bloomberg, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Fortune, the Associated Press, Reuters, PBS, CNN, and the United Nations. I have verified the expert assessments from Carlyle Group, Rystad Energy, Shell, Chevron, and EIA administrator himself. What I'm about to show you is not speculation. It is not opinion. It is the documented source verified trajectory of the global oil supply as it exists right now on May 8th, 2026. And we are at June 3rd right now. But I'm just seeing this. I don't know when this person sent it to me. I don't remember. Okay, so if you can hear me, he says, your life depends on what is in this article. For me, you know, I'm a believer in Christ, so my life depends on him. But it is good to know these things that are taking place, because you are not being warned if these things are taking place. You're being told, well, you see the gas prices are coming down because we did X, Y, and Z. But what they're not telling you is there's about to be a dramatic stoppage to a lot of things. And you're going to start hearing about bottom tank, etc. So he says, I am not dramatic. I am not overstating this. I am telling you that the data says the United States of America will run out of usable oil by July 4th, 2026. Europe will run out this month, which means May. The food system that feeds you runs on diesel. Diesel runs out first. And what I will say is the other day when I had my daughter out driving, yes, she's 20 and yes, she doesn't have her permit. I mean, her license yet. But anyway, we're trying to get there. Okay, so we were driving past a gas station, and this is the first time I've ever seen this since 2022, rather. On it, it said, where it says diesel and it gives you a price, it just said OUT. I said, did that just say out? And she goes, yeah, I've never seen that before. Even that made her like, oh my goodness, what is going on? Okay, so back to the article. It says, read this, understand it, act on it today, not tomorrow, but today. So this is why I'm giving this to you now. I got this late last night, and I don't want to hold on to this, okay? It says the last tanker. On May 3rd, 2026, a Hong Kong flag tanker called the New Corolla docked at the port of Long Beach, California. It was carrying 2 million barrels of Iraqi crude oil loaded at the port of Basra on February 24th, 4 days before the United States and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury against Iran and the Strait of Hormuz effectively closed. That tanker was the last one. The last oil shipment from the Middle East to reach American shores. Now, yes, we do produce fuel here. We do drill, we do have oil here, but it takes a long time to convert that to usable fuel. You get it? Okay, so it arrived, it unloaded, and now it is gone. The buffer that kept fuel flowing for 2 months, tankers that were already at sea when the war started, is exhausted. Byron Stock, director of Chevron refinery, the largest refinery on the West Coast, called it a significant milestone that I've not seen or faced in my 27-year career. His refinery normally receives 20% of its crude oil from Arab Gulf. That supply is now zero. California imports roughly 60% of its crude. Roughly 20% of that came from the Middle East. It's gone. For 2 months, the world coasted on oil that was already at sea. That floating inventory masked the full scale of what was happening. It kept prices high but stable. It kept fuel flowing. It kept people thinking this was just another spike at the pump. That illusion ended on May 3rd in Long Beach. We are no longer in a price crisis, he says. We are entering a physical shortage, a point where fuel stops being available at any price because there is none left to sell. Now, he's talking about what happened to the strait. And mind you, this is not my words. These are his words, okay? He says the Strait of Hormuz is a narrow waterway between Iran and Oman. Before the war, roughly 120 commercial vessels transited it every day. It carried 20 million barrels of oil per day, 20% of the global seaborne oil trade. It was the single most important energy choke point on the planet. On February 28th, 2026, the United States and Israel launched strikes against Iran that killed Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Iran retaliated by closing the strait. By early March, only 3 oil tankers transited in a single day. Mind you, they were doing 20%, 20 million barrels per day, went down in March to 3 oil tankers in a single day, where 50 had passed the days earlier before the war started. Iran deployed mines, their army, the IRGC, gunboats, anti-ship missiles, and drone attacks to enforce the closure. On March 4th, Iran formally declared the strait closed and threatened to attack any vessel attempting passage. At least 34 documented attacks on commercial vessels have occurred since the maritime phase began. By the week ending May 3rd, Lloyd's List reported only 40 ships crossed the strait in the entire 7-day period. That is roughly 5 or 6%. Not what we had been getting, y'all. Pre-war traffic was 120 per day. That is a 95% collapse in commercial shipping through the most important oil corridor on this earth. So the United States imposed its own naval blockade of Iranian ports on April 13th. And on April 23rd, Trump ordered the Navy to destroy any Iranian boats laying mines. On May 3rd, Trump said the U.S. would help free stranded ships, then paused the effort. Iran warned the U.S. to stay out. The strait has been effectively closed for over 2 months. 20,000 mariners and 2,000 ships remain stranded in the Persian Gulf. Insurance firms are refusing war risk covering for Hormuz transit. So they're saying if you go through, you're going through at your own risk. We are not paying for any damage or loss to your vessel. So a lot of ships are not moving. Okay, so and the London Joint War Committee has expanded its designated high-risk zones. War risk premiums have increased 4 to 6 times pre-war levels. Even vessels willing to attempt passage face insurance costs that make the trip economically unviable. So what tank bottoms mean and why it will end your way of life. In his opinion, y'all, this is all his opinion and off of his research. And then we're going to get into the TikTok. This is almost done. So he says, you are going to hear a phrase in the coming days that most Americans have never encountered, and it's called tank, T-A-N-K, bottoms, tank bottoms. Jeff Curry, senior advisor at the Carlyle Group, told Bloomberg Television on May 6, 2026, that oil storage tanks in Europe will hit tank bottoms sometime in the month of May. And in the United States, somewhere in that July 4th period or around there. It could be sooner. He said he has never seen anything like it before. Stop and understand what this means, he says. Tank bottoms does not mean the tanks are low. It means the system stops working. Oil storage tanks require a minimum volume of liquid to maintain the pressure that allows pumps to function. So this goes back to, I'm going to get off track now. This goes back to what I was telling you back in 2022. We were experiencing another war, right? We were experiencing that war, and situations got really hectic. Prices were like $9 at some pumps for regular fuel, and they started to run low on fuel. So you start seeing the yellow bags come out onto the tanks. So when you see the yellow bags come out onto the tanks, you typically will see it says out of service or empty or something like that. It will say on there. What that really means is, because I investigate. You can call it nosy, but I went in and I asked them, this is why you develop relationships with people when you go in. You don't just go pay for your stuff or whatever, you speak, whatever. So they get used to you. And I was like, so y'all out of fuel? What is going on? Like that. And so the guy told me, he was like, no, we're not out of fuel. But what happens is if the tank gets below a certain percentage, we have to put the yellow bags on there and turn the pumps off, because that's reserved. That 20% is reserved for emergency vehicles only, and maybe them so they can get to work. But everyone else, you get absolutely nothing. So Below that, the bottom 5 to 10% of large storage tanks contain sediment. Okay, so I skipped a part. It means the system stopped working. All storage tanks require a minimum volume of liquid to maintain the pressure that allows pumps to function. When levels drop below the threshold that I was talking about, the remaining oil becomes physically inaccessible to the pipeline. Because see, you're going to have air, you're going to have trash and all that stuff in the bottom. So that's why they say when you see them come in to fill the pumps up, you know, the big trucks come in to pump the fuel in to the gas stations, that's not a good time for you to be at that pump pumping your fuel, because the splashing of that is pushing up all that trash and stuff at the bottom of sediment into the oil, and then you're pumping that into your car and you can destroy your car. So next time you see one of those, just go to another gas station. So anyway, it cannot be pumped out. It cannot be moved. The pump fails. So below that, the bottom 5 to 10% of large storage tanks contains sediment, water, and paraffin wax that the industry calls heavies. If you try to draw from that level, you clog filters and damage refinery equipment. The last volume is not usable without intensive processing that takes weeks. So when Curry says tank bottoms, he is describing a point where the infrastructure itself fails. The pumps cannot pull, the pipelines cannot deliver, the refineries cannot process. It does not matter what the price is. It does not matter how much money you have. The fuel is physically gone from the system. Europe is hitting that point now, he says. This month, May 2026, which was last month, the United States is expected to hit theirs around July 4th, but it could be before or it could be a little bit after. But sometime in July, United States is expected to be dry. This is not a projection for next year, he says. That is 8 weeks from the day of me writing this. And he wrote this. So when he write this, I forgot. He wrote this on May 8th. So 8 weeks from May 8th is what? I just saw a comment on my thing saying fear mongering. I wish people would just, no one makes you click on a video. Why do you click on just to be a nag? To be a troll? Is that your lot in life, to be a troll? So he wrote that on May 8th. And today is the 3rd. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's about right. Yeah, about the first week of July, somewhere in there. Now, this is his estimate. It doesn't mean that that's going to be the timeline. Okay, so I'm just reading you what he researched and what he came up with. Okay, so now this is about the numbers. As of the week ending May 1st, total U.S. commercial petroleum inventories fell 5.9 million barrels in a single week. Crude oil stocks dropped 2.3 million barrels. Distillate fuel, diesel and jet fuel dropped 1.3 million barrels and now sits 11% below the 5-year average at the lowest level since 2005. U.S. gasoline stocks fell 2.5 million barrels. This was the 11th straight week decline in gasoline inventories. All of this from the EIA's own weekly petroleum status report was released on May 6th. Globally, the net market deficit is running at 5.1 million barrels per day, according to EIA. To put that into context, the entire U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve held 413 million barrels in December 2025. We have burned through the equivalent of more than 2 full strategic petroleum reserves in 10 weeks. So I'm going to skip that next part. Goldman Sachs reported global stocks at 101 days of demand and projected they will fall to 98 days by end of May. Diesel run out first, then everything stops. Now, all fuels are equal in this crisis, he says. Excuse me. Diesel runs out first. And when diesel stops, America stops. Truckers stop. Trains stop. Planes stop. Everything stops. Processing food stops. U.S. Inventories, the diesel and jet fuel combined are 11% below the 5-year average and at the lowest level since 2005. In Michigan, diesel hit $6 per gallon. In the Great Lakes region, $6. California projects ranges from $6 to $8.90 per gallon, depending on how long the crisis continues. Diesel is not a luxury fuel. Diesel is the blood supply of the American economy. 70% of all agriculture and food products in the United States are transported by truck. Every truck runs on diesel. Every tractor in every field runs on diesel. Every combine harvester runs on diesel. Every refrigerated trailer keeping food cold on its way to the grocery store runs on diesel. Every freight train pulling grain cars run on diesel. So this is why he said famine is to follow. Okay, so when diesel becomes scarce, trucks stop moving. When trucks stop moving, food does not get picked up from the farms. It does not get delivered to processing plants. It does not get driven to distribution centers. It does not arrive at the grocery stores. This is not inflation, he says. Inflation is when prices go up. This is when the shelves go empty because there is nothing to put on them. There is nothing to put on them because there is no fuel to move the food from where it grows to where it lives. The United Nations has already sounded the alarm. The UN News reported that the Hormuz disruption is raising fears of a global food crisis. Economists warned the situation could deteriorate further, particularly if countries begin restricting exports to protect domestic supplies, meaning I'm not sending you anything because I need to make sure we have stuff here for our people. And you know that we get a lot of supplies from other countries. So therefore, nothing is coming into the U.S. A pattern seen in every previous food crisis. Fertilizer prices are already surging because nitrogen fertilizer production depends on natural gas, which of course is not moving through the Strait of Hormuz. It has been cut. California nitrogen fertilizer prices have reached $450 to $575 per ton dollars. There are reports that the oil crisis is turning into an everything crisis, like plastic caps, crates, snack bags, containers are becoming harder to procure. Petroleum, there's issues with petroleum that are needed for adhesives in footwear, furniture, industrial lubricants, machinery solvents for paints and cleaners, beer, noodles, chips, toys, cosmetics, kidney dialysis supplies, condoms. All of it depends on petroleum. All of it is being disrupted right now, he says. We are not approaching a food crisis. We are entering one. And it will become a famine if this continues through June and July, which the data says it will continue. This is his research, y'all. So the aviation collapse has already begun, and we know that. So on May 2nd, Spirit Airlines ceased all their operations because they can't afford it. The announcement came at 3 a.m. Eastern time. 17,000 workers lost their jobs. Airline lawyers said there was no remaining way out. Spirit had absorbed over $100 million in fuel costs since March 1st. It is gone. Spirit Airlines is not the last carrier that will fall, he says. It is only the first. We already seeing other airlines that are cutting, trips and stuff like that out. Jet fuel inventories at the European benchmark hub of Amsterdam have fallen 50% since the war began in late February. Goldman Sachs projects that European commercial jet fuel inventories will drop below the International Energy Agency critical 23-day shortage threshold that they have sometime in June. The UK is identified as the most at risk of jet fuel rationing. Some European countries hold no official jet fuel stock at all. Lufthansa has canceled 20,000 flights through October. Air Asia X has raised fares 31 to 40% and cut capacity 10%. Air New Zealand has canceled 1,100 flights. Over 13,000 flights scheduled for May alone have been canceled across Europe. Almost 2 million seats have been removed from carrier schedules worldwide. American Airlines estimate its 2026 fuel expenses at $4 billion with a B, higher than last year. Gallimberti told Fortune that we're still kind of sleepwalking into approaching disaster. There is little doubt there's going to be a disaster. He called it sleepwalking. That is the word. The data is screaming and the world is sleepwalking. The fuel nobody talks about. So the crisis extends far beyond what goes in your car or your truck. So think outside of that. The Strait of Hormuz carried roughly 20% of the global liquefied natural gas trade. Qatar, the world's largest LNG exporter, has sustained damage at its Ras Laffan processing complex that has knocked out an estimated 17% of the capacity. Rystad Energy estimates the disruption has stripped 7 to 11% of annual global LNG supplies. That's the liquid natural gas. Liquefied petroleum gas, the fuel that feeds plastics manufacturing, chemical production, heating systems, agricultural operations, has seen shipments stall as Gulf exports collapse. Goldman Sachs identifies LPG as a key shortage risk in their second quarter. These are not consumer fuels. Most Americans will never hear about naphtha or LPG shortages, but they will feel them. Plastic packaging, medical supplies, fertilizer components, industrial chemicals, heating fuel for homes that use propane. All of it depends on supply chains that are breaking right now. So the regions that will be hit first, they say not every part of America faces the same level of risk. Geography determines vulnerability. California operates as what analysts call an energy island. It is disconnected from the domestic pipeline network and relies almost entirely on seaborne crude imports. The Chevron El Segundo refinery, the largest on the West Coast, is cut off from significant portions of its supply with no pipeline alternative. California gas is already above $6 per gallon and climbing. The southeastern United States depends heavily on the Colonial Pipeline. Y'all remember when the Colonial Pipeline got hacked and we had no fuel? The major refined products pipeline running from the Gulf Coast to the eastern seaboard. That pipeline is currently seeing reduced output because Gulf Coast refineries are prioritizing exports to Europe, where the shortage is more acute. The Southeast may face localized shortages even before the national average reaches crisis level. Asia and the Pacific are being hit first and hardest. They say Shell CEO told investors that South Asia was first to get that brunt. That's moved to Southeast Asia, Northeast Asia, then more so into Europe. And as we get into April, May, whatever, South Korea, Japan, China together account for 75% of the oil that normally flows through the Hormuz. Australia has already implemented government mandated work from home orders. The Philippines moved to a 4-day work week. Vietnam ordered workers to stay home. Europe faces immediate exhaustion and inventories this month. Heavy reliance on Qatar LNG and Saudi crude via Hormuz has led to industrial surcharges of up to 30%. So they're paying way more than they were paying before. There is something happening in the oil markets right now, he says, that most Americans will never hear about. And it may be the most important signal in this entire crisis. There are two prices for oil. The paper price is what you see on the news. The futures contracts traded on exchanges. Then there is the physical price. This is what actual barrels of oil sell for when real buyers pay real money for real crude to deliver real refineries. In a normal market, those two prices track each other closely. Right now, they do not. The gap between them is $20 to $60 per barrel since the crisis began, depending on the day and the grade of crude that you're trying to get. On May 8th, Brent crude futures settled around $101 per barrel. That is the number the headline is reporting. But on April 7th, the physical price that's being reported that they're actually paying is $144 per barrel, the highest recorded price since 1987, the year I graduated high school. This is the gap of more than $40 in a single benchmark. Veteran energy investor George Noble captured the disconnect when paper settled at $90 and physical traded at $144 on the same day. One of them is wrong, he said. He added, based on 45 years of experience, that when paper catches up to physical prices that they are physically paying actual money down to, the repricing will be violent. The price you see on the news is the paper price. The price the world is actually paying for oil is far higher. And when those two numbers converge, every price you pay for everything will move with them. Y'all, you talking about inflation now? No, we have not seen it, y'all. Reuters has reported that short sellers placed $7 billion in oil price bets ahead of major price movements in March and April, making hundreds of millions of dollars in profit. They're getting rich off of this. Somebody knew. Somebody positioned themselves to profit from the chaos. You know, they always do, y'all. And they did. They profited. So there's a 64-week lag that nobody understands. Here is the fact that should keep every policymaker awake tonight. I would say it would, but I don't think they care. So if the Strait of Hormuz opened this afternoon completely and permanently, the first drop of new Persian Gulf gasoline would not reach a Midwestern gas pump until June of 2027. It's going to take a whole year. Even if they say, oh, the strait is open, and they come on and we got the strait open. We still going to be dealing with what we're dealing with, because we're not going to get the first drop that goes through that Persian Gulf until June of 2027. That's 64 weeks from now. The math is straightforward. He said it takes roughly 40 days for a very large crude carrier to travel from the Persian Gulf to the U.S. Gulf. Once crude arrives at a refinery, it enters a multi-week refining process before it becomes usable fuel. Then the refined gasoline has to be moved from coastal refineries to inland distribution points, which takes another 10 to 14 days by pipeline and by truck. Add it all together and you come up with 64 weeks. That means the pain is locked in, regardless of what happens diplomatically, regardless of what deal is reached, regardless of what any politician is promising us. The physical reality of moving oil across oceans, refining it, distributing it to 150,000 gas stations cannot be compressed. No speech fixes this. No executive order fixes this. No tweet fixes it. Physics does not negotiate, he says. Bloomberg confirmed you're talking 3+ months to even start to get even a resemblance of this stuff beginning to flow. And that 3 months is just the beginning. The full timeline to restored flow is over a year. But the barriers go far beyond transit time. Shipping lanes must be cleared of mines, because you remember they put mines in the strait. Maritime insurance companies must be convinced that the strait is safe for ships to go through. Otherwise, their ships not going to go through because insurance companies are not going to insure them. And Lloyd's of London will likely maintain war risk premiums for months after any peace deal takes place. Ships must be repositioned. Production that was shut, it must be restarted. A process that the post-COVID recovery showed can take up to 2 years, he says, with permanent damage to some reservoirs. Because once the reservoirs have run down, you have an issue with that tank. If wells were not properly mothballed, he said, over 2 million barrels per day of Middle East refining capacity is offline or damaged. Qatar's Ras Laffan facility has lost an estimated 17% of its capacity. Industry estimates put the repair timeline at 5 years, up to 5 years, before they can even repair that in Qatar. Critical equipment like gas turbines has OEM backlog of 2 to 4 years. The total Gulf repair bill is estimated between $25 to $58 billion. Even if peace comes tomorrow, the recovery takes years and years and years and years and years. So that's going to force shutdown of demand. So when supply disappears, demand must follow. Not because people choose to consume less, but because they are forced to use less. Before the war, the IEA projected global oil demands would grow 730,000 barrels per day in 2026. By their April report, the projection had been revised to contradict that down to 80 barrels per day for a full year. Their Q2 2026 alone is projected to decline by 1.5 million barrels. This is not conversation. This is demand destruction. It means factories are going to close, flights are going to be canceled, commutes are going to be eliminated, agricultural operations are going to be scaled back, if any at all, economies contracting because there is not enough fuel to sustain them. U.S. gasoline demand showed a sharp contraction in late April as prices surge and supply fears spread. The IEA projects Q2 2026 demand will decline by 1.5 million barrels. The EIA administrator says our petroleum forecasts are highly contingent on the interaction of 3 variables: duration of closure, production outage estimates, and reopening timeline. He then added the sentence that should alarm every American. He said, "We've never seen the strait close, and we've never seen it reopen. So basically, this is all conjecture of what we think will take place, because this has never happened before. So nobody knows how this will end, he says, because it's never happened. And they said OPEC cannot save us. In every previous oil crisis, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting, which is OPEC, stepped in to stabilize the market, ramped up production. That is what OPEC exists to do. It cannot do it this time. The producers are trapped behind this blockade. Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, the countries with the capacity to pump more oil cannot get their product to market through a closed strait. Saudi Arabia has partial diversion capabilities through the east-west petroline pipeline to the Red Sea, but it is nowhere near enough to replace the volume that normally flows through the Hormuz. And then you need to remember the Red Sea is where supply tankers were being destroyed by Hamas. So there's that risk as well. So on April 28th, the United Arab Emirates announced it was leaving OPEC and OPEC Plus effective on May 1st. The UAE is the third largest OPEC producer and roughly 3.6 million barrels per day. The traditional market stabilizer is paralyzed. Its biggest producers are locked behind a closed chokehold, or choke point rather. Its third largest member just walked out the door. There is no OPEC cavalry coming. Nobody coming to save us. The United States is draining itself to supply the world. I believe that. I didn't realize this thing was that long, y'all. I'm just going to read this last bit and then I'm going to get off, and I will try to leave this linked. If not, go to the Hal Turner radio show and you can get it all there. Okay. So he says, while American storage tanks empty, the United States exporting petroleum at all-time record levels. Total petroleum exports hit 14.2 million barrels per day in 2026, early part of 2026, a 33% increase from 2025. Refined products export hit a fresh all-time high of 8.2 million barrels per day. Gasoline exports rose 27%. Diesel exports rose 23%. Jet fuel exports rose 82%. Jet fuel exports rose 82%, while Spirit Airlines went bankrupt from fuel costs because we are exporting jet fuels instead of being like most countries and reserving stuff for ourselves. Anyway, the United States is sending its fuel overseas to fill shortfalls in Europe and in Asia, while its own inventories are collapsing. U.S. crude imports are at fresh 5-year seasonal lows. The country is simultaneously producing record volumes, but they're exporting record volumes and watching its own reserves drain at record speed. That don't even make sense, y'all, in real world time. The national average price of gasoline as of May 7th was $4.52 per gallon, up from $4.27 just 1 week earlier, and up from $2.81 in January. California is at an average of about $5.84 to $6.17 per gallon. Diesel in Michigan has hit $6. In March alone, between the 2nd and the 16th, gas jumped from $3.01 to $3.96, nearly $1 in 2 weeks. Diesel jumped from $3.89 to $5.37 in that same period. These are not final numbers, he says. These are the numbers on the way to the final numbers. And the summer driving season has not even started yet. Well, it has now, but oh, we are truly facing it, y'all. This is a very good article. I do suggest you read this article. It is very interesting. So let me know what y'all think down below, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Here I am, another long video. I'm sorry, y'all. Please hit the like, share the video, hype the video, hype me up, you know. Let's get it out to more people.